interviewing Wallace Wood, spelled Wallace Wood. This is March 21st, 1980, and we're at rural Withee at his home. Wallace, do you want to tell us where you were born? When?
I was born at Salem, Wisconsin on August the 3rd, 1898.
And what were your parents' names?
My father's name was William Wood, and he came from Scotland, and my mother's name was Bessie Hartnell, and her folks came from England.
Now, when did you come to Withee?
I came to Withee on,
About what year was it?
well, I came to Withee in 1903.
And when you came, how did you travel to get to Withee?
Well, we traveled by train. We came from Silver Lake, Wisconsin. We boarded the train there and came to Withee. And then my father was at Withee at the depot to pick us up with horse and buggy when we landed here.
Now, did your father have a house built here in Withee before you came?
Yeah, him and some of the neighbors came up in, about a month before we did and built a house for us then.
Was that a log house?
No, that's just the old
That's
house
the
that
house you have
stands
now.
out there. That stands out back of the
Oh.
new house.
Where would you say your house is located now? Could you give us a description if someone was looking for it, how they would find where you lived?
Well, it would be west of Withee to the Riverside Cemetery corner, and then north to the end of the road, and then west a half a mile, and then north again for another half mile.
Okay, that's a pretty good description. Now, this house, where your house is built now, was this built on the site of a logging camp?
Well, yes, there was old logging camps when we came here, and there was a blacksmith shop, and we found a lot of old axes and wedges and such like that they used in the logging industry.
What kind of roads did you have to travel over when you first came?
Well, they were muddy roads. There was no blacktopping in those days.
Did they have lots of corduroys in them?
Well, down in this swamp south of us, that was corduroy, and we had to, well, we couldn't even drive on that. When we came here first, we had to go out to the corner half a mile east of here and up along through the woods. There was a marsh there, what they call the Polly Meadows, and we had to follow that up until we got up to our home.
Now, I noticed today that same mud hole is still there.
Yeah.
They have been filling it in, but as today I came around because I didn't want to fall into it. When did the railroads go through in this area?
They,
Is it about 1904? Did they start out?
well, let's see.
From Owen to Duluth?
History, this goes back to 1901.
Okay, why don't you read that to us?
The spring of the year 1901, Mr. and Mrs. William J. Whittemire came from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and settled on a farm located on the northwest corner of Section 5 of the Township of Hickson. Their home was where Frank Vitex lived at this present time. There were no roads west of Black River at that time, so in 1906, the Whittemire with their daughter Jeanette left for Milwaukee, where they made their home. In the spring of 1911, Ed Smith and Charles Yalton, Valley of Withee, built the present Clark store, which they operated for a short time. In the fall of the year 1912, James H. Sheehan of Milwaukee came and bought the store at the time the trees were in their beautiful color. And so he named it Amber, you know. A few had been suggested, but as Mr. Sheehan gazed upon the scenic beauty of the country and surrounding this, well, maybe you can read it better than I can.
That's how it got its name. Then Mr. and Mrs. Sheehan and daughter Mabel moved to Amber and operated the store for 2 years. Then the store was sold to Matt Rupanen,
We used to call it.
then to Charles Very, Ole Peterson, Charles Thompson, Albert Zenzo, Orville Thorson, Frank Vanderwegen, Peter Sandell, Joe Warrens, and Melvin Bartoshevitz, and as being by his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Bartoshevitz. It was called Amber until 1922, when it was changed to Clark. The reason for changing the name was that there is a town called Amberg in Marinette County of northeast Wisconsin, which created a mix-up in freight shipments between the two depots, as the names were so near alike. During the years 1917 and 1918, the Bissell Lumber Company operated a sawmill at Amber, sawing several million feet of lumber. During the years 1919 to 1922, Charles Very bought logs and bolts. In 1919, the old schoolhouse located 3/4 of a mile north of Amber was bought and moved to Amber, where it has served as a community hall until the year 1953. Otto Brown built the cheese factory at Amber in the year 1914. It was located at the foot of the hill south of the railroad and south of the creek on the east of the road, and it was in operation until 1948, Ted and Reinhold Buss being the last operators. So today, Clark or Amber of olden days has gone the way of many busy and prosperous logging towns of this area. Prospered as long as timber was sold, but as the land was cleared and dairy farming took over, the building of the roads and the coming of the automobiles, shopping in the small town ended. It was more convenient to shop in larger towns and cities. What's an interesting story of how Amber and Clark got its name up here. I think very few people know that. We started out when the railroads came in at this time, and about when the railroads came in, how was the work done on the railroads
Well,
to build them?
mostly by manpower and horsepower, you know. They used horses. And that filled in. My dad worked on it here, too, for the company, the contractors that had this part to do.
You mentioned that one contractor would hire smaller contractors to do sections of the railroad?
Yeah. It was this, well, he was a Western contractor, a fellow by the name of Lizzie, that took the job of the whole thing, you know, and then he sublet it. It was George and Dan Kastner from, where were they now? Loyal, that they had this part to do in here.
And they would hire local people to work on that section, whatever was near them.
See, they had a camp in Easter here, you know.
A logging camp?
Yeah, well, they built a camp, and then they worked from there. Some of them they hired from down home in their hometown, you know, and they slept and ate
a
up
railroad
there.
camp, actually, not a logging camp.
Yeah, it was a railroad camp.
Railroad camp.
And they had them working there.
Now, how did the lumber companies here use the railroad to haul logs?
Well, NSO Lumber Company used it at first.
Where did he haul his logs from?
Well, they was up and around the Jump River area and in north of here.
Diamond Lake?
Yeah.
Down there. Did they have a passenger car
No,
have passenger cars on
no.
it?
The first passenger train that went through here was in October 1910, and they called it the Velvet Special. It was such a smooth riding road.
That must be different than today's trains.
Yeah.
About how much a person worked, let's say all day, a 10-hour day, how much would they actually make as far as getting paid?
Well, they got about 10 cents an hour. Be about $1 a day for 10 hours.
Of course, in those days, probably things didn't cost quite as much, so a dollar was worth a dollar and not
Yeah.
the few cents it's worth today. Now, in this area, the months and see, when you went to school, where did you go to school at?
Well, when I first went to school, it was down on the corner where Vernon Miller used to live. We didn't have buses. I walked 2 miles each way, night and morning.
That's a lot of determination as far as wanting to go to
Yeah.
school when you walk that far.
And we started school on the 27th of November, 1905. Natalie Sherp and I started school together. We were the only two in that class.
That was at Munson School, that was on the Frenchtown Road.
Yeah.
You stayed near where
Yeah.
Vern Miller lived.
Yeah,
Now, who was the first teacher?
Bessie Wright.
And what, do you recall where she was from?
See, she was from Granton, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah, Granton. She got $35 a month.
Now, how did it happen that the school moved?
Well, it was just by one vote that they voted to move it up here, up on this side of that swamp where it was.
Why did they want to move it?
Well, because there was more people living up here north of us. See, there was quite a lot of people, families in north of the railroad track.
You had more people up here than what they had actually from the Frenchtown area, because
yeah.
there was a school there. The first teacher that you had after the school moved, do you recall who that was?
Well, that was Hannah Delmatter.
And that was in about 1906.
Yeah.
Now, was the school called Willowdale before
Yeah.
that, or just when it moved
Yeah.
here did it change its name?
Well, when it got moved here, they changed their name that it didn't really have a name before that.
Mm.
Yeah. But Anna Delmatter got $30 a month. See, my dad was on the school board at that time, and he asked her how much wages she liked. Well, she says, I'd like 35, but if you want to give me that, I'll teach for 30. So he says, well, you're hired.
For 30.
Yeah.
Now, she taught, let's see, the school went from, do you recall what years the school was in operation?
Well, it started in 1905.
Mm-hmm. And when did the school cease being a school?
Well,
Was it about in 1942?
yeah, I guess about then.
Now, probably the highlight of the pupils, in 1915, there were about 64.
Yeah.
That probably was your biggest population, then,
Yeah.
or did it get bigger than that?
Oh, in 62, was it? It was James Fredette that taught the school. And then he was county treasurer after that, for Clark County.
Oh, in
James H.
42.
Fredette. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happened to the building after the school closed?
Well, they moved it to Withee then. See, that was about the time that Dana Hall burnt in Withee, and they wanted a new building, so they bought the school and moved it down there. And that is what's Dana Hall now.
What happened to the students that used to go to the Willowdale School? Where did they go then?
Well, I don't.
Did some go to Frenchtown and some go to Withee?
Well, then's when they started busing after that, see, and they went to Withee, most of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're right near you're not that far from Black River here, and there are several bridges around here. When was the first big Munson Bridge built?
That was built in 1911.
Do you recall any particular stories, or when you saw it built, remembering any particular things about it?
Well, one thing I remember that Mrs. William Taskin was the first one to drive across it with a team of horses.
Were the horses afraid to go across, I wonder?
I don't know. I guess they went okay.
Now, when they were clearing the land around here, what method did they use to clear it with? This was quite a wooded area when you first came.
Yeah.
How did they go about clearing the land?
Well, it was mostly manual labor, cutting brush and cutting what trees were left. And one thing I could put in there, when they logged here long years ago on our land, there was 3 big pine trees that they neglected to cut. And we cut them down after we got moved here, and we got lumber sawed out of them, and we got lumber enough to build our new house and build our barn and machine shed and all of those things out of those 3 big pine trees.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
They must have really been nice,
Oh,
straight.
they were big. Well, one of them was 4'9" on the stump. My dad got 23 logs out of that. It was kind of went up too, like that, you know.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That was really it's surprising they didn't cut it down.
yeah.
Someone really must have forgotten it. Now, when they had stumps left after they cut them down, how do they get rid of the stumps?
With dynamite.
Was,
To
was,
blow them out with dynamite.
was this a very dangerous job?
Well, it was dangerous. The person didn't watch.
Do you recall any people that were injured or met their death by dynamite because they didn't use it correctly?
Well, this Peter Jensen, he was about 8 o'clock in the morning of the 25th of May, 1914, he was blown up with dynamite.
You were telling me you were eating breakfast.
Yeah,
Why don't you tell that
we were
story
eating
here?
breakfast. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we just sat down to breakfast, and we heard this big boom. But we didn't know really what had happened because there was no telephones or anything in those days, and it was 2 or 3 days later before we found out what had happened. But he was dynamiting stumps, and he had 10 pounds of dynamite, and they figured that he was loading a stick of dynamite with a cap, and some way or another that it went off and blew him up.
Now, were there other people that were injured also? Maybe not killed, but injured?
Well, I suppose there were others that were injured, but he was the only one because he was a lone man.
Now, you were way out in the country here. Did you get mail from someplace? How did you get your mail?
Well, the mail route started in, what I got,
1912?
1912, and Fred Westergaard, he had a store in Withee at that time, but he was the first one to get the job as mail carrier, and he went for 2 days on horseback and delivered the mail. And then after that, in 1913, Percy Free, a native of Withee, was chosen mail carrier, and he carried mail for several years. And after that, in 1943, he retired.
What kind of a man do you remember that he was?
Oh, he was a real nice man.
Did he see that the mail would really make an effort to see the mail got through?
Oh yes, well, that in the winter time, he traveled on with horses, and cutter, or little cutter anyway, and he had one horse he left at William Caskin's, and when he got there, he used to change horses and take the one he left there and go on and finish the rest of his route.
This way the horse got a chance to rest.
Yeah.
Didn't have to make the whole route. Now, this was Rural Route 2, and Rural Route 1 from 1905 to 1935. Was there a Lawrence Hanson that was the mill?
Well, Lawrence Hanson was on the route west of Withee. He wasn't out this way.
The Route 1.
Yeah, but now it's all Route 1 goes as Route 1. Used to be Route 2 out this way, you know.
It's confusing where the roads go. Now, you have, over the years, you have been very, you had kept your daily journal of how the weather has been changing and how it has changed over the years. Now, maybe kind of going back to some of the early years, like 1903, could you tell us how some of the years were, specific years that you recall, were just, a little bit different? Like 1903.
Yeah. Well, 1903, that was a wet summer. We had much snow.
And it snowed on May 3rd. You
May
had a big snowstorm?
3rd, yeah. We had a big snowstorm. And then 1909, we had, the 1910, we had little snow and a dry spring and summer. And there was quite a few forest fires and that.
Was it this area right in here where there were a lot of fires?
Well, there was fires around here, yeah. On the south side of the meadow here, it burnt all over through Caskins and that.
Were there any people injured when the fires were on?
No, there was nobody injured. Then, well, that's when I started. On the 7th of June, we had planted a garden early. We had potatoes up about 6 inches high, and we had the hard killing frost, and they were froze off right to the ground, and we didn't think they'd come up again, but they came up, and that's when I started keeping that record there in 1913.
So if we have, killing frost nowadays, in June, we shouldn't really be surprised because it has happened before.
Yeah, it has happened.
On February 13th, 14th, and 15th in 1923, what particular thing do you remember?
Well, we had a heavy snow, and no mail, no train service.
Just stopped everything then,
Yeah.
didn't it? Now, do you recall what you might have done on that day when it was so snowy?
Well, I don't know. I guess we stayed inside.
Probably if you'd been a little younger, you would have been out sliding on the snowbanks or something.
I suppose.
May 8th, 1923.
Yeah, snowed all day.
And September 21st?
September 21st, 1924. We had that tornado that went through here, started down near Augusta and killed many. Took out the Black River Bridge just northwest of us. It was set about 4-inch pipe in piers there, and it ripped them right off and hurled it into Black River.
That must have been quite a job to rebuild the bridge then.
Oh yes,
The railroad bridge.
It was a while before they got it going again.
That must have stopped all the logging operations and things that
Oh yes,
they had here.
yeah. There was no train service for several days there, so they got it rebuilt.
1933 and 34, the winter of, we had
Yeah.
very little snow. What kind of
Yeah.
a summer did we have then?
We had a dry summer.
In that same year in May,
Yeah. 9th and 10th, we had dust storms.
when you had the dust storms, was it possible to see the sun at all?
Well, you couldn't see much then because it was the air was so full of dust at that time.
What did the farmers do that had cows that had to graze someplace in the grass? There was just hardly any grass at all.
Well, I don't know. Some of them took their cows up north further for a while where there was grass and that to graze on.
And was your father, well, were you farming at that time?
We were farming, but we had enough of our own men at that time. See, we had this here marsh, and we cut marsh hay.
You had your ready-made water right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
That was one year it was good to be living near a swamp.
Yeah, it was good then.
Now, in January of 1936,
Yeah, well, we had lots of snow and cold winter it was then. 16th of January to the 23rd of February, 38 days of below zero temperature.
that was a long, cold.
Yeah, it
Spell.
was.
Now, in 1943, the winter.
Yeah. Well, we had snow and then we had a wet spring and summer. We had 15 inches of rain. I remember the night when 7 inches of rain fell.
And that was in June.
That was in June, yeah.
What happened to Black River then?
Well, Black River was raised way up too, was high.
Is this the first time in 60 years or something that had been as high as
Yeah,
what had been at that time? Now, another winter where we had lots of snow, what year was that? 61, 62?
61, 62, yeah.
Then we had lots of snow.
Yeah.
Now, this winter of 61 and 62 also was very memorable. And do you recall when John Glenn made his flight around the world? The day that he did that?
Oh, I don't know, I got it down.
I was wondering what you might have thought about that, if you thought you'd ever see something like this in your lifetime.
No, I never expected to see something like that.
Can you think of anything else that you would like to tell us about the weather? Now, it's been a couple of years since 62. Has there been something that has been a little unusual since then? We don't have it down here, but something that you maybe have written down or that you want to tell us about the weather that you've noticed over the years.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, 1968, the pipeline
Yeah,
went through.
so I got every day down.
And you have a diary here that has all of the dates
Yeah,
written down and what happened
yeah.
each of the years, every day.
Everybody that died.
This should actually go into a historical museum someplace. Could write quite a history from just taking each page and going through it.
Heard a robin this morning.
Yeah, yesterday was the first day of spring,
Kathy saw a robin the other day.
April 21st.
Very cloudy.
1944, it was partly cloudy and mild. 1945, it was partly cloudy and cool, rained at night.
Yeah.
1932, it was cloudy and cool, snow flurries. 1938, clear and mild. And 1938 was cloudy and cool and rainy. Saw ducks on the meadow.
Yeah. But it's March today.
Okay, there's March 21st.
Cloudy and cool.
1916, cloudy and cool. 1932, light snow. 1914, cool and clear. 1936, saw blackbirds. 1916, clear and mild. 1940, saw robins. 1928, cloudy and mild. 1938, snowed in the nighttime. 1936, cloudy and mild. 34, thunderstorm. Night rain and most of the day. Saw robins and the meadow was flooded. Now, is there any old adage about the first time that you hear a thunderstorm that 6 months later you'll have your first frost?
Might be there was thunderstorm the other night. I heard it thunder and I had the radio on and then come a crash every once in a while.
There's a kind of an old, I guess, old-timers adage about that, and I was wondering if you felt this way about it.
Well, I don't know. It could be early spring. It's hard telling. 1968 that they put the pipeline through here, and we were down there when they opened up across the river to go, and they had the river dammed up, and the dam broke, see, and the whole thing came rushing down on there. And Kelly, they had to move fast to get out of the way that time. See, that was in October, I think. Hey, this was Boss, Harold. I can't think of his last name now again.
From Mosinee.
Yeah. Thought I could remember his name. I sold him a cow and a heifer. That time he was Boss when they went through here.
Yeah, Boss on the pipeline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What type of recreation, when you were young, what did they do for fun?
I don't know. I used to cut brush with those things.
Did you ever go swimming in Black River or
Well,
someplace?
I have went swimming, but I can't swim, I sink right down.
They just played in the water anyway.
Yeah.
Got wet. What did some of the older people do for recreation?
Well, I don't. There's a rule. They worked on the land and that mostly.
Did they ever get together and have parties, celebrate birthdays or anniversaries or something?
When we got the hall up here at Clark, then they used to have dances, get together.
Did you used to dance?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like to dance, but I don't know. I guess I couldn't anymore.
Well, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, we used to have square dances and that up there a lot.
Did they used to have like basket socials and things like that?
Yeah, they had socials and so on.
Now, do we have any of the same problems today that they had years ago?
Well, I don't know. Nowadays they spend too much or can't get along like we used to,
Have more and you spend more?
Yeah. I like some of them getting big salaries and that. All I get is $203.30 a month. Social Security. I'm a diabetic. I have to take insulin. And I have to have that outside that costs me about $1 a gallon for oil. And I still get along on that. Yeah. And then look at the big salaries some of these are getting nowadays.
The more you have, the more you spend, I guess.
If I was doing it, I'd balance the budget. I'd cut down all these high-salaried guys, cut them down to, say like these congressmen and senators, they get $61,000. Cut them down to about $500 a month anyway. Let them find out what it is to have to live without spending so much.
Mm-hmm. Are there any changes right in this area that you have really seen over the years? How has this area changed? We've talked about some of them, but any particular thing the way you've seen this area change? Like even with the schools?
Well,
the people?
You take like the people up north of the railroad track here, there used to be several different families living there. Now there's nobody. They've all moved out.
How about the schools?
Well, of course, now they have the bus service and they transport, but there's none on this around here that go to school anymore, you know.
The children are all out of school type
Yeah,
of age.
yeah.
How about our little township of Hickson here? How has that changed over the years?
Well, there's less and less farmers all the time. You know, you could drive from here to Withee, and you knew pretty everybody that lived, you know, in those different places. Now there's so many that are gone. There's just a few. It's the same. You go out over to tea, and there's only a few living on tea now. And there used to be a lot of different families. I knew most all of them down that way.
Yeah, having lived in the township here for many years, you would
Yeah.
get to know
Oh yeah,
about everyone. Now we also have a new town hall,
yeah.
so that is brought back into the township instead of where it was at. To what do you credit your longevity? Having lived this long and been actually fairly healthy,
Yeah.
what do you credit this?
Well, I credit a lot of it to not taking so much of this junk that's advertised. You know, here, oh, it's over 40 years ago, I had such pain in my chest, you know, and that. And I was to two different doctors, and they told me I'd have to have my gallbladder taken out. And that's over 40 years ago, and I've still got it yet, and I haven't got any pain. But, you know, well, I went to Dr. Dyke, and I went to Dr. Baker. They were both in Owen at that time. They both told me, nothing you can do. You got to get that gallbladder out. And then I went to a third doctor, and he was a very religious man. And he told me, he says, you know, that when God created man and put those different organs in his body, he didn't intend they should be taken out. And so he says, I'm going to give you something to take, and you take it for 30 days and see if you feel better. And so I done that, and at the end of 30 days, and it's never bothered me since, for over 40 years.
Pretty good.
And look at the people that go and get their gallbladder out, and this and that.
Now you told me you have a kind of a remedy or a way as not which has helped you over these years not to have a cold. What is this method that you use?
Well, I take and dip my finger in a little cold water and put it up in each side of my nose, and sometimes a couple of times a day, and I haven't had a cold for 33 years.
And how about sinus?
And I had sinus trouble so bad, and so I'd been taking different things the doctors gave me. That's over 40 years ago, and I used that, and it didn't do me any good. So one day it got so bad I couldn't see. I was just about blinded, and I took as hot a water as I could and put it in the big bowl. And I held my nose in there and breathed through my mouth. And after a while, the sinus trouble ache all went away, and it's never bothered me since. And that's over 40 years ago. So I believe in water and not in all these remedies that are advertised. You see them on TV and all over. I don't believe in it at all.
Just good pure water.
Yeah, good, pure